Welcome back. Wait, Bonnie, we're live. I missed that we were coming back live. And I'm sorry, Bonnie and I were in a private conversation. Sorry about
Which
that.
is probably way interesting. So you'll just have to guess as to what we were talking about.
That's right. But in any case, we are back live, and I've got Bonnie Yates on the phone, which is always a very exciting thing for me. And now we've got her on Skype on the thing as well. So sorry about that, Bonnie, but thrilled that you're
There's
here.
No problem. There's no problem. We could tell all the listeners that unlike all other moms in the world, we worry about things like if our kids love us enough, and then we tell ourselves that we're really not being very emotionally grown up, and then life goes on. Anyway, that's what we were talking about.
And I was saying to Bonnie that I'm remembering that it was exactly a year ago that I was sitting in my car in a parking lot, parked and talking to Bonnie because Bonnie was talking me off a ledge, mom to mom. It wasn't even a legal thing, but Bonnie was giving me her time and telling me that, it's okay when our kids are independent. So, and because you're a good friend, you're a great mom, and to all of your kids, and you are a great friend and a great friend of the community, and you're one of those open, loving arms in the world, Bonnie. So, and having said that, for people who haven't watched the show, Bonnie is also an amazing special education attorney. She is joining us courtesy of Hirji and Chow, and they are an amazing law firm. Tell us a little bit about Hirji and Chow, Bonnie.
Okay, so philosophically, Shannon, since you opened the door, I just want to say I believe we're one family on this planet, and we're in this together, and we all love our kids, and we understand how everybody else loves their children, and we all want the best for our children. And so anyway, Hirji and Chow is a special education law firm. We're located in Culver City. We do disability discrimination, special education, higher education, regional center stuff, and so on. So it's basically most facets of education law. And it's a big area, and it's exciting because it's big, and you can never know enough. And so I love autism-live because it's constantly teaching me to learn about things that I need to know more about. So we're all learning together.
I love that. I love being a student in the universe. And then we always ask you to do a disclaimer for us about the things that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, the disclaimer is that we are teaching you about your rights under state and federal law. We're not giving you legal advice about your specific case, because if you're anywhere other than Southern California, we can't do that. But if you are in Southern California, we can do that, and we talk to people all the time. We intake them. We don't charge them for that. So if you're in Southern California and you're interested in that, we'll give you the phone number at the end of the program. Today, what we're supposed to be doing is answering a lot of questions that people had about IEPs. And I got to tell you, when I read these questions, I just felt like my heart broke a little bit because I've been going to IEPs and just feeling like this is a really hard business. It's really difficult day after day to try to, keep a straight face when people say it's not that we are doing this for cost reasons, we just don't think the student needs it. A mediator said to me, I hope I didn't say this last week, he said, probably did say this, he said, you're going to come in and talk about all the students' needs, and the district's going to come in and talk about how great the student's doing, and so on.
And there is one question in particular that broke my heart when it came in.
Yes, the last one, right?
I think the second to last one. But let's start at the beginning. And so, but anyway, did we get to the disclaimer part? Did I miss that? Did you say that it's...
We disclaimed enough.
Okay.
And the other thing is, whenever we get done with this, if we get done, we're going to start talking about least restrictive environment, because I think that really has a lot of significance for people with kids that do need to be in a general ed setting and exposed to typical...
Absolutely.
So that's coming.
Okay,
but
so
first we're going to talk about IEPs.
Okay, so first question, I just got my notice for IEP, and I always hear people talk about bringing a tape recorder like it's some magic bullet. Why do I need to bring a tape recorder? What does it actually help with? I feel like I'm missing something.
Okay, great question. And the answer is, well, first of all, people are apprehensive about telling the district that they're going to record, and in California, of the law is that you have to give 24 hours written notice. People sometimes say, is an email okay? And I'm here to tell you that an email is absolutely a written form of communication that is appropriate to use with the district for almost all communications. Parents say, well, I don't want to go in there and start by being really adversarial, and recording the meeting is an indicator that I am being adversarial. Other parents say, I'd rather go in without my recorder and see how they really behave rather than having them conform and sort of lawyer up because they know they're being recorded. I respect all of those sentiments, and when I was a new special ed lawyer, I decided on a case-by-case basis whether I was going to record my IEPs. It didn't take too long for me to realize that you have to record all the time because you're not going to need it most of the time, but when you need it some of the time, you really, really need it. So let me give you an example. I had an IEP in December where we were contesting the district's we were contesting a number of things the district did, an informal dispute resolution agreement, and an assessment that made the student ineligible. Our evaluator came in and explained to the head of behavior support services how the district test results were wrong, and they skewed the results improperly in favor of a determination of ineligibility. And that special ed person sat in his chair and basically said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like he could not contain himself. If I'd had a video of him, he was like a melting candle, okay? And then he basically made a lot of admissions, and they had legal significance with regard to the district's informal dispute resolution agreement. If I had not had that particular meeting recorded, I would not have that proof now, and I'm going to need it when I go to due process. So there are rules that you can only prove are broken if you have a recording. So I had a meeting where they came in, the student was transitioning from 5th grade to middle school, and they all came to the table and they sat down, and the first thing that they said is, we're offering blah, blah, blah middle school. There was no discussion about present levels of performance, progress on past goals. And then I went around and I polled them, and I said, how many of you has ever met the student? 0. How many of you has, or maybe there's 1. How many of you has ever visited this middle school? None. Do you know why it was chosen? No. Did the people downtown tell you to offer it? Yes. And when I got the IEP, of course, it didn't read that way, but that was a predetermination kind of a problem because they picked a placement, they didn't know anything about it, and they were just hoping to ram it through in a meeting. And those are two, I think, strong examples. It's a preventative measure. You don't know if you're going to need it or not. And I just think you can't know, so you have to do it.
Yeah. Can I say that I agree? And I had a parent recently who's been around the block a million times and has been to several IEPs say to me, I made the decision not to bring my tape recorder into this IEP for this very specific reason. And she said, and I know that that's going to set you off, Shannon, because you say always bring the tape recorder. And I said, no. If you are at the point where you know all the things that can happen and you consciously make the decision and you know what you're giving up, then I have nothing to say to you because that's you understanding. But especially for parents that are, I would say, in the first 5 years of this, like I can't even imagine walking into an IEP without a tape recorder. I know for us that having the tape recorder made the difference of what my son got because we caught them in mistakes. And they were little mistakes, but they were big enough that we didn't end up having to go to due process. We didn't end up having to have the heartache of fighting on and on and on, but mistakes were made, and my son got what he actually needed and was appropriate because of that, and it ended the argument. So I can't even imagine. And when parents write to me and tell me some of the things that get said at an
I know.
IEP meeting, I mean, I literally have an allergic reaction, inappropriate things that get said. And my first response is, oh my gosh, did you get that on a tape recorder? To which they always say, no, I didn't bring the tape recorder. And then I go, oh, and you know, it's twofold, because I I honestly believe that most of those things would not get said if there was a tape recorder, because I think everyone's on their best behavior when there's a tape recorder, which means that more productive things get done and it doesn't break down into these shouting matches that I hear about, that are started on the school side. Because when the tape recorder is there, people behave themselves. But when that isn't true, on the sometime chance that that isn't true, you'd want to have that tape recorded, because that's going to help you to ensure that your child gets what's appropriate and that you don't have to mess around much longer. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Bonnie. And for this parent who's like, I feel like I'm missing something, for me, the missing something is that it gave me the opportunity to hold the school up to what legally my child was responsible for. And I had proof that their intention was not to do that. And it was game over. Game over.
Yeah. A couple other reasons occur to me. One is, as with doctor's appointments, sometimes so much is said that you know, people say go with somebody else or record the doctor's appointment, because you're going to have to evaluate it. You're going to need to evaluate it afterward. I think an IEP is exactly like that. Also, clients come to me and they ask for a case evaluation, and they'll tell me something happened at the meeting, and I will say, did you record it? So I'm constantly confronted with things that I believe happened and I can't prove.
Yeah.
So those are the other reasons. The final thing is, and this is just like a moment of levity, because we need that sometimes. It's getting so weird in special ed that, like, I'm really thinking we need to blow the whole thing wide open, and we need to have like a special ed reality show. And so, maybe it's going to start with some of these recordings. I don't know. But, I mean, just the kind of stuff that happens.
Bonnie, you still have not seen my one woman show. There is a segment in it that is at the IEP, and I play everybody in the IEP. It's right what you're talking about.
Oh my God! Once again, Shannon Penrod steals my thunder. I'm moving in a really, A crowd. You can see that. Anyway, what's the next question, Shannon?
Okay, our next question. We had our IEP, and I hadn't watched your show. I signed it because I thought I had to. I didn't agree, but I didn't realize I could say that. I went home and felt sick about the whole thing. I started Googling and found Bonnie on your show. Now I'm really sick because I think I messed up. What do I do now? My son is 5, just diagnosed, and is finishing TK, transitional kindergarten. Their placement for him is a special day class for first grade. I think he would be better off repeating kindergarten in a regular classroom with an aide.
Okay. You've got to get on the horn really fast and request another IEP meeting. You can write them a letter and say you were pressured to consent, you didn't understand your legal rights, which included that you got a reasonable time period to consider the offer, but you got to get another meeting in before the end of the school year. And you got to go in, and we aren't going to answer the question of how you would do that IEP strategically. That's a different question. But I think you've got to renounce your consent and say that it was under duress and it wasn't really informed consent. Informed consent is a big thing in IDEA, and that you need another meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on to the question that made me want to cry. We just had our IEP and I want to cry. Why do they have to make it so hard? I just want what is best for my child. Is there something wrong with that? My daughter is in 2nd grade and has been through a lot. She is a twin, but her brother was born with some pretty intense medical issues. He recently passed away. I am doing my best to keep myself and my family together and take care of my daughter who has ASD and is struggling to understand why her brother is no longer here. And on top of all this, I have to deal with these petty, ridiculous school administrators who want to argue that she doesn't need speech twice a week. Really? Is there something I can say to these people to get them to be more human?
The answer to that is maybe, but it would depend on how much she likes kind of direct confrontation. I happen to like calling things as they actually are and sort of busting through, the obfuscation. So on one hand, you could sit down with them at an IEP meeting and you could say, I'm not doing this because I want anybody to feel sorry for me, but I do need you all to think about what this child has gone through. The kinds of feedback I'm getting from multiple administrators make me feel that you haven't really thought it through, and describe everything that's happened to her daughter. Now, in terms of the speech services and the fact that they won't agree to speech services 2 times a week, which is not a very expensive plan, okay? Sometimes people cause unintended consequences. Sometimes when you refuse to do the small thing that you should do, you end up with a bigger thing that you wouldn't have had to do. She needs to look at her speech and language evaluation, assuming it's recent, and her psychoeducational evaluation, assuming it's recent, and she needs to ask the district for independent educational evaluations in the area of psychoed and speech. And she needs to get an independent person to come in and look at her daughter's needs, which would include the social, emotional, and also the speech. And my guess is that approach might work. When people are being overly bureaucratic, and this is part of the reason that I'm sort of trying to think about like humor and doing my copycat Shannon Penrod, reality show, I'm really, really distressed by how many people seem burned out and unfeeling. And I think ultimately the problem we have is that people, all of us, can become burned out and unfeeling as a defense mechanism against too much work in a situation where one feels that you're dog paddling forever and you're never going to catch up. And I think that is the reality that a lot of people feel who are administrators, or other professionals working within a school district, because the numbers are just staggering. So, we need to figure out if there's a way we can bring them back to their basic humanity or not. And if not, if folks are burned out and they just can't do it anymore, it's really their responsibility to keep their side of the street clean. And you shouldn't be working for children if you can hear about what happened to this young twin and just feel like, okay, next case. So I think you really got to go in and make them make eye contact with you and you talk to them about what happened. This isn't a garden variety, run-of-the-mill, hey, I need lunch bunch kind of a situation. I mean, this young lady may need some counseling support as well. It sounds like mom is doing her level best to manage everything.
Yeah.
Support her, collaborate with her. Don't make it worse. It's just going to cost you more money.
And I think, Bonnie, am I wrong in saying that this is an ideal case in which to have an advocate or
yes.
somebody go with?
Yes, and yes.
Because
you need support.
Yeah,
you need support.
You are doing your best here, and sometimes, it's that old saying about you can't fight a land war in Asia. You've got things going on at home, and you shouldn't have to have this argument with the school, but since the school has raised it, I think bringing somebody in to fight for you and to say some of this for you, and even to potentially have, I know I'm not somebody who's trained to go into IEPs, but I have gone into IEPs as a friend to someone who had been through some stuff, and I was able to go in and say, to be a dispassionate person, to say, this is not appropriate. This is not an appropriate way in which to address this. This is not, just as a friend. Because you're allowed to bring other people into your IEPs, but for this person, I would recommend a trained advocate. Wouldn't you?
We got to take some of the load off this person's shoulders.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And there is a trend in California, which is a good trend, which is that people are beginning to say what happens at home and how the student behaves at home is relevant to her overall educational performance and the impact of the disability on her. And so we're moving into an era where more and more, I think, home behaviors are going to have to be considered as relevant in coming to an understanding of the unique needs of the student.
Well, and you know, for me, I'm glad that people are finally starting to get on that, because that's a big fat duh.
Yep.
As a former school teacher, I mean, you know, you could see when something was happening at home. If mom and dad were separated and going through a divorce, that, you know, that child would stumble, and somebody needed to be there to pick them up and hang on to them so that they didn't fall.
Yeah.
And you know, so losing your brother, whoo, yeah, no, absolutely. All right.
Very, very traumatic.
Well, sending a hug, a big hug to that mom. Moving on to our last question. What can I do when the school says he does not need an IEP? We have the regional center and a diagnosis. School says he does not need an IEP, and I think this is wrong.
Okay. I'm assuming that he has a diagnosis of autism, and the district's position is that the autism has no educational impact. We are seeing this more and more frequently. Educational impact does not only look at academics. It also looks at social, emotional, adaptive, and so on. And so I am going to assume that the student has behavioral deficits which are not interruptive, but will ultimately interfere with him being able to pass a job interview. And I am going to take the position, without knowing too many facts, that that student needs special education and related services for those reasons. If the student has no IEP at all, you have a dispute about eligibility. The way that you have to work out the eligibility dispute is you have to look at the district's initial evaluation that they did, assuming that they did, because they should have, and why that assessment concluded that there was no educational impact. From there, you're in the position to get an outside evaluation at district expense, and if you take the case to somebody that understands autism, your kid's going to end up eligible. I have had several cases this year where students who have been eligible under autism were made ineligible. It's as if districts let people get a little better, and then they try to sort of cull them. It's not going to work.
Yeah, but again, a case where you're going to need some help and support.
Yes, you're going to need to go to due process, probably. I mean, sometimes when we get the outside educational evaluation, we go to the IEP meeting and we can convince them. Sometimes we go to the IEP meeting with our outside educational evaluation and we can't convince them. And when we can't convince them, then we have no choice but to file for due process.
There we go. Well, Bonnie,
you know, I think the district's going to back down at some point. I think they're just trying to see how much stamina a parent has for the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's unfortunate too. That makes me a little heated, but you know, we started this show with talking about what do you do when faced with adversity, and sometimes it's just super important to stand up to it and work the problem and keep trudging. And sometimes with schools that makes the difference, because I do think that sometimes they say, well, let's take this portion of them and say that they're not eligible and see who squawks. And the people who squawk, then they go, okay. And the people who don't, then they go, well, we don't have to provide services. And you don't want to be that parent that didn't squawk and your kid lost out. So, as always, Bonnie, you are amazing. These questions were amazing. We have to say thank you.
Yeah, great questions.
Yes, and we are not live next Thursday, but we will be back with you the Thursday afterwards, so people can be sending in questions and we'll be hanging on to them. Before we let you go, will you please tell us again how we can get a hold of you at Hirji and Chow?
Of course, but only if first you let me say that when we reconvene, we will talk about least restrictive environment, which has all kinds of implications, not only for students that are in general ed and have questions, parents have questions about their rights, but also about students in special ed and how they can be mainstreamed. So, you know, IEP questions and IEP season, very appropriate. And then if, you know, we will get time, we will start talking about LRE, because I know you've had questions about that. Hirji and Chow is at www.lawyer4children.com. And there's our phone number, 310-391-0330, and we'd love to hear from you. Let's keep our chins up.
Yes.
We're in this together. We're stronger together. Let's keep our chins up and keep going.
And isn't it nice to know that somebody like Bonnie is on your team, which is a fabulous thing. I relish that, always.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. Have a great week, and I'm going to see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Bye-bye, Bonnie.
Bye.
All right, and so that was very informative. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back for the first time on the show, we're very excited. Justin Leaf is going to be here with us. He's going to be talking about a conference that's coming up for the Autism Partnership Foundation, plus a lot more. And as I promised, he's going to talk a little bit about this article that came out claiming that ABA causes PTSD. You're going to want to hear what he has to say about that. And of course, I'm sure you will enjoy what I have to say about that as well. Stay tuned for my head to fly around the room. Stick with us.